How's it going, YouTube? This is Wake Run Collapse. I have your questions here today. So last Sunday I asked you guys to leave your questions about Japanese collecting, etc. in the comment section of the video, and I just typed a whole bunch of them into a Word document and printed it, and we're gonna go through it like this. So this is probably gonna be a pretty long video. I've not planned any responses in advance. I really haven't studied the questions or anything like that. So there are some questions on here that I'm not gonna really know about. I think it's an accurate reflection of who I am, rather than constantly look up everything and have the answer for everything. That encourages people to ask me anything that they want to, when Google can probably answer some of the questions for you as well. I'm very happy with the quality of a lot of the questions that are in here, but the last thing I want is, can you tell me the 17 most valuable Barboach cards in existence in Japan, and also the dates that they came out and the days of the week that they came out and stuff like that, because that's the last thing that I want to start answering for people. But I got some really good questions here, and we're going to get into this now. I also have a pen, because I'm going to try to follow along with each question as I go. So let's crack into this. I didn't write down who listed which question, just because I felt like, I don't know, I would probably mispronounce a lot of your usernames, and I'd rather skip that. So just suffice to say, thank you to anyone who left a question. I really, really do appreciate it. Can you battle in Pokemon events using Japanese Pokemon cards? Now, I believe the answer is no if you are an English player. Obviously, Japanese players can use Japanese Pokemon cards, but I think there used to be a rule back in the day that you could play with 10% or fewer of foreign language cards as long as you had a translation with you, but now I don't think they allow it at all. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. By the way, I'm going to have this cough pretty much the whole video, so don't worry, I'm not dying. Does Japan have TCG formats like standard, expanded, etc.? If so, what are they? I think they do have formats that are a little bit different from ours. Maybe it has to do with the timing of the release of cards, or maybe it's just what the accepted format is. But I don't really know how to answer. I'd gotten a response from someone when I was kind of making fun of the Japanese Acerula full art price, which is like $110 online, versus the English full art price, which is like 18 bucks. He's like, well, different formats, so the cards mix and match with different decks a lot differently, so maybe that card is a lot more valuable based on other cards that are available. I want to hop into collecting Japanese cards. What's the best way to do so? Oh yes, that was a good one. Wow, what the hell? So this is very much dependent on what you want to do and your goals as a collector. Do not jump into this thinking that you're going to collect every set like I have, because I didn't jump into this thinking that was going to be my plan, and here I am 5 years later on the cusp of finishing. Basically, what you want to do is come up with how much of your budget you're willing to spend towards cards, and find out what type of goal you would be happy with. Maybe you want to just collect your favorite mons, maybe you want to collect individual cards, maybe you want to complete one set, like common to GX. Maybe you want to complete one set completely, including, you know, super rares, hyper rares, ultra rares. What you want to do is basically you basically want to figure out what's going to be best for you and your situation, because it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. I could say buy a booster box of every box that you like, or buy one booster box of your favorite set. If you really like the experience, try to fill in the holes, maybe collect another set. You really want to do what works best for your situation, but I would definitely recommend getting a booster box at one point or another just for the experience of it. If you don't like it, if you don't think it's cost effective after that, then at least you've experienced it for yourself and you know for sure whether you like it or not. Like me, I opened an English booster box on the channel last year. I opened a box of Fates Collide, and it was a cool experience, but not one that I feel I need to replicate, so I feel confident in collecting Japanese cards now. So I'd recommend one box at some point, but ultimately the way that you collect and the degree to which you collect is up to you. What site do you get your cards from, and how different is the pricing from American? This pops up a few times in this video, and I can't quite say how different the pricing is versus English cards. So I buy all my new booster boxes from AmiAmi.com, AMI.com. I'm sure there's tutorials on how to purchase from them, but it's pretty easy in comparison to some of the other Japanese sites because you don't need a middleman service to do it. Other cards, like I'll buy occasional lots on eBay. I used to buy a lot more on eBay, but now I've kind of scaled that back. I do pick at some Japanese card retailers, like Yu-Yu-Tei has been pretty good for me. TCG Republic can be pretty good in a pinch. As far as the difference from pricing from American, I don't really know what the standard price for most stuff is in English. I would gather that the average price that people pay for an English booster box is like $90. Is it like $90? I will occasionally see an English box on eBay for like $80, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like it's a pretty good deal, but I don't really know for sure. As far as how that differs, it varies from set to set, which is, again, something else I'm going to tackle in a later question. But I can't speak to the individual rarity or value of any English cards. I can tell you that even with the more expensive Japanese booster boxes, in general, you're not going to be paying, at least from AmiAmi, much more than $40 a box. If you buy a lot, obviously the shipping cost kind of gets condensed a little bit, but if you buy just a single box, I would imagine it's probably like $45, including like a cheap method of shipping to get it to your house. Very interested in any tips you might have for finding good Japanese purchases on eBay. So I don't know if this is something that I've talked about before, but every day I search on eBay for Pokemon Japanese, and I look at everything that's come up in the last 24 hours. I can scroll through this pretty quickly because sometimes there's between, I'd say on an average day, probably between like 500 and 800 listings on Pokemon Japanese. There are certain sellers that I've gotten used to not paying attention to their cards. In general, I'll just look at the images on the side, and I'll scroll through an entire page of 50 in like 30 seconds. Because if there's nothing in the thumbnail that interests me, why would I waste time reading through the description of each element? So I can buzz through it pretty quickly, and I have a pretty good knowledge of what would be a good deal, what's a bad deal. Some of these are awful deals on eBay, by the way. So please, if you're purchasing something that's expensive or rare, please fact check to make sure that it's an actually valuable card, and not something that's like $15 cheaper if you bought it somewhere else. But basically, I'll skim through it. I usually only identify maybe one or two a day that I might be interested in buying, and most of those I just add to my watch list and never touch. I did get a lot more like cool bulk lots from like Noodles and stuff on eBay, like holo lots, EX lots back in the day, but the value isn't there right now for me based on how much stuff I still have. But basically, I just like to look through and find what interests me, and then if the price is there too, then I'll pull the trigger on it. Let's see. Is there a good place to sell bulk cards? No, I wish. If you guys find one, let me know. That'd be sweet. What's the best way to collect unlimited editions of specific cards? So you want to look for either a retailer, which will list whether the cards are unlimited or first edition. I think the Card Collector UK will do this based on their individual listings, but he's been cleaned out of a lot of stuff for a while now, somewhat because of me, but also because of some other people coming by and purchasing stuff to fill the holes in their collection as these cards get older and rarer and it's more difficult to find stock. Something else I would really recommend is finding a website or finding auctions with high resolution scans, because then you can physically confirm for yourself, is the card unlimited, is the card first edition? If the scan is good enough, you'll know if that stamp is on there, because they should be showing the whole card, and they should also be showing the back of the card to show you any wear and tear on the card. So unless it's a trusted website, I mean, I don't buy from anybody I don't know if I can't see both sides of the card. But in terms of unlimited edition, it's pretty difficult to tell without having that specificity. And sometimes, especially with a site like an eBay or like Yahoo Auctions or something like that, you're best off, looking for the image or looking for it specifically listed by the seller. which is kind of a crapshoot. I know. There are definitely other ways that would be a lot easier, but most people don't go through the trouble of listing each individual card as unlimited versus first edition. And for the most part, a lot of people will list the card if it's first edition, if they think to, but if the card is unlimited, they won't list it that way, because it can have effect on the amount of interest that the card generates. You're more likely to see a card that is first edition that isn't listed as such than an unlimited card that says it's unlimited, if that makes any sense. I have all 4th gen Japanese booster boxes except for Lost Link. Good for you. That's awesome. When is the best time to sell them? That's a more complicated question. Whew. So I'm not SM Pratt. I don't claim to have my finger on the pulse of the market. By the way, subscribe to SM Pratt. He's brilliant when it comes to management of collections and values of cards, and it really has a gorgeous mind when it comes to this kind of stuff. I would say now is not a bad time because a lot of the boxes have gone up significantly in price in the past few years, but it kind of depends on which ones you're attached to. I would rather see you, for your own sake, listing the boxes individually somewhere and listing the prices fairly high. Look around to see what else is out there. I know like Heart Gold and Soul Silver booster boxes are selling way higher than they were a few years ago. I used to be able to buy them for $70 a box, and now they're like, what, $250? They're a lot now. I've actually got, I think, one of each as well, but they used to be way, way cheaper. So when you see a huge increase like that, that makes it more likely to want to divest those boxes and sell them now while you have the guarantee that you're going to turn a big profit, depending on what you paid for them in the first place. Some other boxes, you don't really see that kind of lift. It's more in terms of what's still available. We've got like Pulse of the Frontier, Bonds to the End of Time, Chasing the Moonlight, Mysterious Cry, booster boxes like that really haven't moved a whole lot in terms of actual value. The only thing that's happened is that fewer people are selling them. I remember I bought a Temple of Anger booster box not that long ago for like $80, and that's kind of what they were list price in Japan. It's pretty close to that. I think they're like $66 list in Japan. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer for this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you are comfortable with turning a good level of profit, then now's probably a good time to sell Heart Gold, Soul Silver, like the Legend Series boxes. Shining Darkness will probably get you a pretty penny nowadays. And, let me think. Galactic's Conquest is actually pretty good too. If those boxes were still cheap and available, I'd probably be buying them. How difficult was/is it to get older Japanese boxes and cards? Do you think they're harder to find than English cards? I can't speak to if they're harder or more difficult, more valuable in comparison to English cards, but I can tell you that finding older Japanese boxes is a pain in the ass. It's absurd how expensive some of this older stuff has gotten. With the 20th anniversary, the renewed interest in the older TCG, Pokemon Go bringing out that Pokemon mindset in the older collectors. I could say I'm an older collector. In folks who experience it maybe in their childhood or in high school and forgot about it and now getting back into it. There's a lot more interest generated for that older stuff, and that makes those prices skyrocket. Added to this is when YouTubers like me decide that we're going to open older stuff. It generates interest, but if there's not a lot of it that's still around that's sealed, it actually drives the price up because there's less availability, and now there's more demand, which means that more people are willing to pay more for those cards that there are less of sealed. Some Japanese booster boxes are over $1,000. I remember kicking myself like 3 years ago because I kind of clicked quickly on a Japanese base set booster box. It was like $380 shipped. I was like, this seems like it'd be good to buy, but I'm going to look through the rest of the person's auction, see what else they have. Maybe I can combine some shipping. By the time I got back, the box was gone, and now they're like $1,500. The 3rd gen boxes are even worse. I've seen some of them for $2,500, which is insane. So you're best off not buying old boxes now, unless you are merely in it for value, in which case I don't even know if you'd get it based on the set and the price you pay. I would definitely recommend, if you need to collect those older sets, maybe buy a few packs for the experience, but aside from that, buy singles. Just buy single cards, or look for bulk lots to be able to fill in a lot of your gaps in your collection, and then purchase the individual cards you need beyond that. If you're just looking for ultra rares, is it better to buy singles or boxes/cases? This kind of ties into the last question. You want to purchase up until the point that your purchasing power is less than buying singles. So it depends on the set. Let's take Bandit Ring, for example. With Bandit Ring, there were, 9 EXs and Mega EXs in a booster box, and the boxes were like $25. So between that and the pull ratio, I think there was a lot of value in purchasing multiple booster boxes, getting a bunch of stuff. But then you look at a set like Blue Shock or Red Flash, it's a smaller set. They had, 4 EXs plus Megas in a set? 4 or 5, I don't remember. Mewtwo and a Mega, Glalie and a Mega, or Houndoom and a Mega, and then I don't remember if they had another EX, but I don't think they did. For a set like that, if you want to collect it, I mean, if you're going to buy a box, just buy one. You don't want to buy beyond that, because really all you're doing is putting the onus on yourself to have to sell some of your duplicates to pay for the box that you didn't really need to open in the first place. What's another example? If you can get a cheap box of Rising Fist, you can get a couple of those. Yeah, get a couple of those. It's a big set. It's 96 cards, and you'll want that experience too, because you've got the Megas, you've got the regular EXs, but it's such a challenge to fill in the rest of those gaps. Whereas if you get the majority of a set from a single box, buy a single box, and then if you're only interested in collecting the rest of the set, that's where you buy your singles. If you're just looking for the ultra rares, like if you're just looking for EXs, GXs, and better, buy them singles. Buy them as singles, especially the new sets. Just find a good website that gives you quality pricing, or, me, shameless plug, and buy those, because, I mean, a new box is $36 plus shipping. You get 4 GXs or better in a main series box. Is it really worth it for the chance of the full art? I don't know. I think I would rather, at most buy one box for that. But I think if you're only in it for ultra rares, you don't care about commons, uncommons, hollows, that kind of stuff. If you're only in it for EXs, GXs, and better, I would just buy singles right out of the get-go. Right out of the gate. I would just get singles. Why do you like collecting Pokemon cards at all? Is it just a hobby? It is just a hobby. I've monetized it for myself to be able to collect at the level that I do, but I'm not making massive amounts of money by being a Japanese card collector. I like being a Japanese card collector. I wanted to do it on a grand scale, so I found something that worked for me. The monetization is completely secondary. It's necessary for me to be able to continue this path that I've gone on, buying cases and all these extra openings and stuff, is being able to sell, but ultimately at the core it is a hobby, and I do it because I enjoy it. That's how it started, that's how it still is. This one's a little long. How do you value Japanese cards? I live in Tokyo. Hey Tokyo, I want to visit you someday. And I buy so many old school Japanese cards for less than $1 that I see on eBay all the time for over 20 bucks. I understand that it's harder to get Japanese cards overseas, but is the difference in value really that much? Nope. It's really not. It's really not. It's not so much the difference in value versus the difference in availability and the perceived value for people. When I sell base set hollows, near mint or better, a lot of them are only $5 for me. That's just the way it is, and obviously as they get damaged, it goes down further and further. I kind of shake my head when I see somebody being like, "Oh, Japanese base set Hitmonchan hollow," and they list it for like 18 bucks. It's like, the card's not worth that much. And then I kind of feel bad for people who do pay that much for it, because it almost validates the concept that the card is worth that much, which it's not, but maybe they couldn't find it anywhere else on eBay as a single card in that condition. And they said to themselves, this has got to be the best that's available. I'm going to scoop it up right now. So no, the cards aren't worth that much. They're not worth that much over here either. It's just a matter of, can you find it somewhere else? And is the convenience factor of being able to buy that single card on eBay, does it outweigh the stress and the time that you would put into maybe the lack of availability trying to find it somewhere else? Which is why I like getting bulk lots of old holos, like really old holos, because that enables me to undercut those ridiculous exorbitant prices and price it more to what they're worth, while still, turning a little bit of a profit and making some people happy. Regarding Gym 1, and what time are we on? We're at 20 minutes. Whoops. Hold on, another cough coming. There we go. Regarding Gym 1 and Gym 2 packs, since they had a guaranteed holo inside, are they therefore not as valuable or rare as their English counterparts? Again, don't know how much English cards are worth compared to Japanese cards, but I can tell you that actually makes the packs a better experience for the collector, for the person who's opening. And that's more important than the actual value of the guaranteed holo inside. I would assume that with Gym 1 and Gym 2, even though they played freaking 52 pickup with the sets, a lot of them are going to have like roughly the... Ooh, fly. No, I couldn't get him. It's worth a shot though. Welcome to Wake Run Collapse's Attack of the Killer Fly video. I would imagine that a lot of them have a fairly similar amount of holos in each set, so the English ones would be more difficult to pull, but the English cards are also a lot more available over on this side of the Pacific. So, are they therefore not as valuable or rare? Well, it depends. Let's say that the English and Japanese booster packs cost the same. If they were both like $10 a piece or something like that, I really don't know how much they are. And you got a guaranteed holo out of one of them, and then out of the English packs they were 1 and 3. Then it'd be more rare and more valuable to have the English ones. But what if you can't find those Japanese packs? So it's kind of dependent on what's around. What are some good sites / resources for finding bulk Japanese cards for older sets? eBay used to be way better at this. eBay is not as good at this anymore because a lot of people are snatching up that bulk. You're best off just looking around. I mean, even if you want to just Google bulk Japanese Pokemon cards and see what comes up, you can sometimes bounce around a lot of sites. Basically, anything you find on eBay through Google search history is probably an expired auction, but maybe you'll get lucky and find it somewhere else. I'm honestly not hugely in on the knowledge of this because I haven't had to buy bulk for so long. Is English or Japanese collecting cheaper? Neither. Keep that in mind. It doesn't matter what language you want to collect in. Just because there might be variations, and sometimes, fairly large variations in actual pricing, availability, etc., that doesn't mean that it's going to be cheap by any means. The amount of money that you put into it is very much dependent on how much you are willing to put up and what your goals are. If I wanted to collect every Japanese card now, it would be a lot more expensive than it was before because a lot of people are snatching up those older cards, and I was able to get in there a few years ago before the big boon happened. English, I would imagine, is more readily available for people, but in addition, Japanese nowadays I feel like is probably a little bit cheaper, especially with all those hyper rares and ultra rares and stuff. I mean, you can buy a case of Japanese and get pretty close to completing a set, and then maybe spend $100-150 completing it afterwards. So then you got a buttload of duplicates and you spent like $1,000 on the set. Whereas English, if you buy 2 cases, you're not right there for completing the set. So, but maybe you do have more duplicates too. Are subsets part of the main series, i.e. is Shining Legends part of Sun and Moon? It does say SM3+ on there, so I consider it part of the Sun and Moon block of releases. But, and this is important to note, but Shining Legends, since it is not a mainline release, does not have a guaranteed full art inside their booster boxes, like Sun and Moon 3 did, like Sun and Moon 4 is going to have. Why are some booster boxes bigger than others? Hold on, I need some water. Yes, I still drink out of a gallon jug. Well, that's a two-part answer. The boxes are bigger if they have more cards in them, of course, but why do some boxes have more cards in them? Well, it kind of depends on what they're going for at the time. They kind of have this standard uniform, approximated booster box price that they've determined people are willing to pay for Japanese cards these days. And if you look at a lot of the Sun and Moon releases, they very much follow this pattern. So you've got, what's the average price if you buy it on AmiAmi? 4,000 yen. So like I've been saying, like $36 US. All the mainline, Sun and Moon 1, Sun and Moon 2, Sun and Moon 3 are all right there. They're 30 pack boxes, 5 cards in each pack. You look at Sun and Moon 1 Plus, Sun and Moon 2 Plus, Sun and Moon 3 Plus, they're all right there also, but they have fewer cards. But where is the value? So you've got, packs with, got boxes with 80 cards, but they're all mirror foils. Then you have boxes with 120 cards, but they have those extra shinings. Then you have boxes with 150 cards, but they're just mainline releases, and they're all priced the same. And then you've got the Best of X and Y, which also had 150 cards, but included a lot of reprints, even though they were super playable and useful. Sorry, I have to adjust this curtain over here. That's better. Even though they were super playable and useful, they were reprints, so they felt like they had to include more. And then you've got the upcoming GX Battle Boost, which should be interesting. But they've determined a price that people are willing to pay. So rather than change the price of the boxes, it seems as though they're actually instead changing the amount of cards that are available based on what they think people will perceive as valuable. What would be a good Japanese set to start off with before opening an English set? Depends on what you want to do. If you want to switch to just Japanese collecting, I would recommend getting the newest set so that you can experience getting cards before everybody else. That part's pretty cool. If you think you want to do just a hybrid of English and Japanese, find a box of a set you like that's, affordable. Look at what's out there. If you're a big fan of Collection Moon, or if you're a big fan of Alolan Moonlight, or Battle Rainbow or something, snag a box. Snag a box and get the experience for yourself. What's the rarest Japanese card ever made? It's a couple of them. The Illustrator card, I would think. I saw the Illustrator card online for like $75,000. But when you think of what it means to be the rarest Japanese card ever made, does that mean it's a card that exists in the fewest collections? The card that was printed the fewest times, like that Era Raichu? What does it mean to be the rarest card ever made? If it's the rarest card ever made, but nobody's interested in it, is it still that rare? They've got those. They've got that Princess GX and that weird supporter trainer that they printed 100 copies of. That's like crazy expensive now. Are those the rarest cards ever made? No, but they're the rarest for now. And they pack a crap load of value. They're like $800 plus, in some cases. But in terms of the rarest ever made, I don't know. There's a few of them. They're stupid expensive. They need to stop doing that. Not that I'm mad about it or anything. It keeps me from collecting full promo sets when there's a whole bunch of cards that are valued at $50, and then a couple other cards that are valued at like $400, and then another card that's $1,000. That's why I don't collect promos, because they do stuff like this. If you were to compare a given English full art to its Japanese counterpart, aside from the overall higher quality of the card, how would you describe the major difference in terms of look, feel, texture, little details, etc.? I did do a video on this a while back, comparing English and Japanese Pokemon cards. I did it actually for Fates Collide, and I compared one card to the next. You get that very, very fine detail in the Japanese cards, but the English cards have gotten a lot more lustrous in the last few years. I think the quality's definitely gone up. In terms of little details, the full arts for English, in my experience, and I don't know if it's still the same way because I don't have any Sun and Moon English full arts, there's a lot more pop. Like it's very much more, it's more luminous, it's more holographic. It's more like somebody put on a computer monitor and said, look at this card, it's so bright. But then you have the Japanese card, which is a little bit more subdued, but also has such fine detail that really shows up beautifully. And I definitely prefer the Japanese version, but the English cards can be more attractive to people as well for a variety of reasons. How do you get yen? Well, you go to the bank. No, I'm just kidding. Credit card companies, and this is important to note for anybody purchasing online in yen, your credit card company will pay your purchase value in yen for a small fee. Usually it's like 3%. Depending on what you have for a credit card, maybe they waive that. Like I have the, what the heck is it called? It's a Sam Jackson one. The Quicksilver card from Capital One. So I get 1.5% cash back, not sponsored by the way. I get 1.5% cash back on every purchase I make, and I pay no foreign transaction fees. So if I were to, let's say I would make an $800 purchase online. Before, I used to use my American Express card, but if they charge me 3%, that cost is now $824, versus purchasing with my card with the cashback and no foreign transaction fee, it's $800. But then you also have to subtract $12 for the cashback I get, so really it's $788. But yeah, your company's is gonna field that cost for you, so you don't have to worry about that. It's not like you're shipping them hard money. So they will electronically do it for you as long as they can get some money out of you. And just because I need to mention this, PayPal hoses people on the exchange rate. Let's just talk about that for a second. It's not uncommon for you to pay an extra 5% based on what they perceive to be the exchange rate at the time. What they say is the exchange rate is not the exchange rate. It's what they're translating your money for. So they're going to make money off of you too. If you think that, oh, because it's down to like 94 decimals on the U.S. dollars to yen exchange rate for currency, that must be what it is. Look it up at the time. It's not. But hey, they're a business. They have to make money too. I think they're screwing people on it. Especially if you use your credit card through PayPal and they still ding you for it. That part's dumb. What Japanese exclusive Pokemon items do you see skyrocketing in the future? You answer the question for me. If it's Japanese exclusive, it's likely going to go up. It's like EX Battle Boost, Premium Champion, those collection boxes like the Rayquaza, the Charizard, the Vulpix ones, those go up. The Pokecune boxes, stuff that people don't have as available or only had, limited runs. That's the kind of stuff that goes up. Of course, booster boxes are going up also, but I think it's going to take a lot longer for X and Y booster boxes to go up, simply because they printed so many of them, and there's so much of them that are around. I would be shocked if anyone is interested in more Tidal Storm, Gaia Volcano, or Emerald Break, based on the incredible amount of bulk I have from them just from regular collecting. Older stuff obviously is going to continue to go up in price for the time being, but again, that's not a guarantee in the long-term strategy. So I personally don't collect just to have value for stuff. Cost, availability, resellability, which set was the best in your opinion? This is an answer that I'm going to give. I'm at 33 minutes. Cool. This is going to be like a 45-minute video. This is going to be an answer that's very much based on my experience at the time. So you have to keep that in mind. 20th Anniversary was the first and only set that I collected for free. And that's because they reprinted all these, base set holographic cards and all this other great stuff that people were super interested in. They wanted to get those older cards too. I sold a ton of completed common, uncommon, or common, uncommon, holo completed sets. And I finished the case with a completed set. So at the time, and even now, that's really the only time I've collected a set for free. But you can't really do that now because the set isn't as popular for people. So that was the best set when it was released. As far as now is concerned, there's really not a hard answer for that. Because cost, availability, resellability all affect each other. If you have a set that's not very available, but is also very resellable, then the cost goes up. If you have a set that is really, really available, then its cost is going to go down, and maybe its resellability goes too. Are there sets not printed with the first edition stamp? Oh, heck yes there is. I mean, they don't really have a first edition stamp. It doesn't say the first edition on the 7th gen. It doesn't say it on 1st gen either. If you get base set cards in Japanese, you will not find a first edition stamp on there. If you do, somebody faked it, because they have like the whole shadowless thing going on or whatever. Starting in 2nd gen, they had a lot of first edition stamps on stuff, but not on everything. A lot of the decks that you get, a lot of promos, may say first edition or not, and some of them were never printed in both. I mean, some sets were never printed in both. X and Y 8, Blue Shock and Red Flash, they never printed an unlimited run to my knowledge. Ever. And that's probably the case with some other stuff too. E-Series 1, I think, might have only been first edition also. But then there are some... Wow. That was hilarious. My buddy Siri thought that I was talking when I was discussing the series, because they took the series as hey blank. I don't want to set her off again. She's gonna yell at me. Anyways, additional sets had very limited first edition print runs, like Clash of the Blue Sky. I mean, the difference in first edition versus unlimited Rayquaza Gold Star pricing is like 4 or 5-fold. It's crazy. When you buy a product that is imported from Japan, do you have to pay customs? How long does it take to get your cards? I'll answer the second question first. How long does it take to get my cards? It's fast. I can get it shipped on Friday and get it on Monday in most cases because I paid for DHL. EMS is a little bit slower where I live. It's more like a 4 or 5 day wait. But if you purchase with Sal or some of these other, cheaper ones, it can be 2 to 4 weeks. It can take a while. And also, depending on how efficient customs is in your country, that can slow it down even further, or maybe they're fast and you get it quickly. Do I have to pay customs? I have to pay, I live in Massachusetts, I have to pay Massachusetts sales tax on any purchase over $1,000. That's a law, and at first I thought it was a customs charge when I had to pay for Collection Sun and Collection Moon, because I spent like $1,500 and they said, well, you owe us another like 90 and change in order to have your package delivered. And then I was doing my taxes at the end of the year and I was like, oh, that's why they did that. So now I don't owe that because I paid it at the time. Some of you folks have to pay so much in customs, and I feel really bad about that, but it's just not my experience. How long have you been collecting Japanese cards? That'd be 5 years now, almost 5 years. Your collection in bulk is massive, I'm sure of it. Yeah, I can guarantee you that. I'm not on the Alpha Investments level. I'm not on the Darium's Pokemon level, but I've got quite a bit, yeah. Just because I'm lazy with selling bulk, which I've got to get better at. You're going to see a bulk sale video, by the way, in the next week or two, if all goes well. Where do you go to check the values of Japanese cards, and what are some of the better places to sell and buy Japanese singles online? So, I don't sell online. I've never posted an eBay auction before. I'm going to have to. Ew. Eventually. Sorry, there's a hair on my tongue. That's kind of weird. I hope it was mine. Buying them online, you just, like I've said some of the places before, but selling them online, I don't really have experience with. I know some of the Japanese retailers will allow you to sell them your own cards, and then obviously they'll turn it for a big profit. But if you're really struggling and you have to get some money for it, I guess that's something you can explore, but I don't have any experience with it, so I can't really help you with it. As far as checking the values of Japanese cards, you can use some sites, but not always. Like if you have a Japanese site like Yuyute, their prices are usually very, very good. But that's very, very good for people who live in Japan. For us, like you would have to use the service like Bai, which charges you, 5% on what you buy, and then you pay extra shipping costs, and then I think you have to pay to get it shipped to them also. So your price as an overseas collector is very different from what they price on Yuyute. Same thing with TCG Republic. They can show what a card is listed for, and if the card has been listed there for a while, their price is probably too high. Really, the best way to check is find out what people are willing to pay in general. Look at sold eBay auctions. That tells you what people are willing to pay now, recently in the last 90 days. That's all they'll show you. So if you've got a card that you think is worth $30, but people have been selling it online successfully in general from $20 to $25, you're not going to get $30 for that card in most instances. Likewise, if you have a card that you think is worth $30 and people are buying it for $50, either on the open market, like on auction, or as buy it now, that should that should affect your decision as well, and you should probably raise your price a little bit to get the most value out of it, and then drop it down afterwards if you have to. We're nearing the end. 3 more questions, or 40 minutes in. Why do Japanese EXs and GXs look better than the English versions? That's my personal opinion, and yours also, and I would say just because they do. I just love the card quality. Again, I can't really talk about GXs, but EXs, they just look fabulous, and they're pretty close in English versus Japanese, but I love that little extra attention to detail on card quality. I think it really makes a difference for me. Why do you prefer Japanese cards over English cards, and why did you decide to start collecting? You could tell my voice is going now. Well, I decided to start collecting because I watched a YouTuber named Mr.55771 open a booster box of Hail Blizzard, which was part of Next Destinies. He pulled the Groudon EX full art. I was totally in love, and I watched as many Japanese openings as I could over the next weeks and a couple months, and then I finally knuckled down and purchased from Poly100 a whole bunch of Japanese booster boxes. I got a Hail Blizzard, a Psycho Drive, Dark Rush, Dragon Blade, Dragon Blast from him all at once. And then I went back and I got, White, Black, and Red collection. I got Freeze, Volt, and Cold Flare when they came out. And then I spent some time watching more YouTubers, like the Cat's Meowth was a big deal at the time because she was doing her 2,575 booster pack opening, which is a real treat for anybody who wants to go back and check that out. That was primo. And I decided, what the heck? Plasma Gale is coming out soon. I'll be getting those shortly. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. Here we are today, 5 years later. And yeah, I prefer Japanese over English because that's how I was introduced to it. Maybe in a different world, I watched that as an English opening, and I enjoyed it more, but I loved the novelty, the idea of the Japanese cards, the boxes, the fact that you get them earlier, the fact that they look so different. I think a big selling point for me is that I can't read the cards, and that solidifies it as a collectible for me. Last question, what's the difference between English and Japanese sets besides one is English and the other is Japanese? That is the biggest difference. Well, I'm going to kind of add on to the question and say, why is it important what the difference is? Because that question is answered differently by everybody. I mean, you have an instance like maybe you want to just be a collector. Then, okay. Maybe you want to play with your friends. That means a great deal as well. Maybe you've got something else in mind. But basically, if you want to play in America, you should be collecting English cards, or at least be playing the TCGO. So then Japanese cards are really not going to be your thing because they don't use them in tournaments. If you want to be a collector, you have your pick of languages. You can collect both or one or the other. English sets, I would say completion is really, really difficult these days because of the way that the sets are built after they come over from the land of the rising sun. Japanese sets are really hard now too, but I think it's a lot easier to deal with because you're buying fewer cards. You don't have a massive amount of bulk that's just like hanging around. So, I mean, you could even narrow it down to aesthetics. English cards maybe don't have quite the same quality, even though they've gotten better. Japanese cards have the silver border as opposed to the yellow border. But you can go into a shop here and buy a pack or a box on a whim, and you can't really do that for Japanese cards. There's a lot of differences, to be honest. English cards come out later. Maybe they're more available to you because if you get hit with custom charges, maybe you have to collect English because Japanese get way too pricey. So it very much depends on your situation and also what you want to do with the cards in general. Wow, this ended up being a 45-minute video. Thanks very much for your questions, everybody. I do greatly appreciate it. I gotta find a way to edit this together and get this ready because I gotta post this today. Stacks and Packs will be back tomorrow. Not sure yet if I'm going to have a sale video on Tuesday, but the YouTube algorithm has very much pointed out to me how important it is that I upload every single day or else my channel can just burn in hell. So I'm doing my very level-headed best to do that. We've been on that path for about a month now, and I have no signs of stopping, although there may be an interruption in service when I go to London in September. But maybe I can film enough stuff out in the open before that happens. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I will catch you later. Oh yeah, and thanks for your questions too. You guys made this video possible, and that was cool. Bye-bye.